Hello everybody, today we'll be talking about the best systems for an empire to be most successful, even though, spoiler alert, they all vanish in due time. This won't be a insert blank here is the best type of insert random function of an empire, but more of seeing what ideas are good for an empire. Let's get into it. Let's start our talk with the government. There are many different governments and systems an empire's government could go into, but we'll look at what makes its system good or bad. We'll start with the Kimber Empire, an empire that flourished in what is today Cambodia for 639 years, from 802 to 1431. A very long time, but its government was one of the reasons it fell in the end. They had an absolute monarchy, a form of monarchy where the monarch holds supreme power. They are above the law and customs. This was also hereditary, so power was passed down from generation to generation of the same family. There are many different types of problems with this government. Since it's hereditary, the rulers are determined by chance instead of actual talent. And since the monarch is absolute, you can't object to the decision. The monarch could absolutely destroy the country, and the citizens would have no choice but deal with it, except if they want to shed blood and rebel. It also causes a problem with rulers. Since kings tended to have many wives and concubines, power would be divided between the children. There is always a problem when trying to decide the next ruler. This caused the empire to be split upon many different states, sometimes having violent disputes with each other for power. Now, switching over to an entirely different continent, we'll look at a specific monarch everyone all knows and hates, King Henry VIII of England. This man was known for nothing but how bad he was. He was an unfair ruler that executed many that opposed him, even some of his own family. He did not know how to handle civil matters and caused many wars that didn't need to happen. He led many to their deaths because he was also a terrible general. But no one could oppose him because his rule was hereditary, passed down to him. If anything to be learned from these two empires, it's that governmental freedom is important. Having the freedom to choose your rulers allows for actually good and qualified rulers, and also the opportunity to abolish them if they're leading the empire to a bad place. This is how an empire is supposed to rule their subjects. Legitimacy is important for any emperor. For this screencast, emperor will mean ruler of any kind. Legitimacy gives people a reason to follow your rule. If you have no legitimacy, there's absolutely zero reason that the people have to follow what you say. There are many different ways to gain legitimacy: fear, violence, religion, voting, and so on. As we did in the government section, let's look at some that crashed and burned and figure out why. Let's start with fear. Ruling with fear is never a good idea. Terrorizing your people and threatening them will only cause them to hate you. An empire has people working together to make it flourish. If they aren't working together or don't want to be together, there's no community and nothing can get done. Our first example will be Ivan the Terrible, the 16th century ruler of Moscow. Being given absolute power at age 16, he ruled with an iron fist. From the start of his rule, he was building a terrible reputation. He believed most of his clergy was out to get him, and the death of his wife only made it worse because traces of mercury were found in her bones. Being so suspicious, he massacred many that he believed went against him. He tortured them with very gruesome methods and ordered assaults on religious members, clergy, and merchants. He specifically targeted low-earning merchants so he could take all of their stuff, and they couldn't rebel, because if they did, they would all be killed. His form of legitimacy was obviously fear. This completely ruined all fortune the newly found empire had. No one wanted to work for him. Nothing could get done. Everyone was afraid of him. And he always sat in a land far away because he was so afraid to get assassinated. Even though he was so afraid, he did eventually get assassinated, after causing so much civil unrest among the people and ruining many lives. Now compare this to an empire like the British. While it may have been a monarchy, they had a fair parliament. The British Empire flourished in every way you could think of. They are constantly expanding. They are involved with a lot of trade, so the economy was doing very well. And the people were almost completely free to live as they please. If the people are happy with your empire, the more they work together, and the greater the success you will have. The monarch did not have absolute rule over the people and was only involved in national matters such as declaring war and making national decisions. Now, while we're on the subject of ruling and freedom, let's switch the gears a little bit to religion. Religion is a valid form of legitimacy if and only if most of the people are part of the same religion. Religion is an important part of many people's lives. So if in their religion you're believed to be god kings, such as in the Kimber Empire, they will think you are the god king and will live under you as such. But having your government based on a religion is not a good idea, because as religion swaps from Hindu to Buddhism, people were believing less and less in the king and its empire. And since Buddhism values equal social classes, they started to branch away from the absolute rule, absolute monarchy the Kimber had. It's also important to let people have their own religion and not force them to do anything. Forcing religion onto people will make them angry and give them cause for civil war, since religion is very important to people. This was the exact cause of the 30 Years' War. Religious freedom had been granted as part of the Peace of Augsburg, but an emperor named Ferdinand II decided to force Roman Catholicism on the people anyway, which led to a violent civil war that killed millions. In the Holy Roman Empire, a man named Martin Luther also started the Protestant Reformation with his 95 thesis statements against the church for unjustly taxing people. They were using religious legitimacy to steal money from the people, claiming if they didn't want to go to hell, they needed to buy a special letter from them. In short, let the people do what they want and don't use your power to scam people for your subjects, from your loyal subjects. The next two stops will be shorter, so let's just combine them to save everyone's time. These two stops are economy and culture. Economy is the basis of every power. Without a flow of money and agriculture, people literally cannot survive. They will starve to death. If an empire wants to be great, they'll need a very good agriculture system and the ability to trade with other empires to get things they lack. The Kimber Empire was very good at this. They had an astounding agriculture system, so people almost never went hungry. Since they had so much surplus of food, they used it as a trading resource to get things they needed like iron. They exported a lot of fish and rice and got back different types of metals from neighboring empires. They also had a steady flow of currency used between the people to purchase goods and services. The economy was one of the strongest aspects of the Kimber, which explains why they lasted for over 600 years. Their culture was also very immersive and beautiful. This empire was very into building things. They loved building religious statues and had many sculptures. One of their most prized cultural standings was their capital, Angkor Wat. While culture is something you cannot directly control, it is still important to the way life of the people. The more in tune the people are with their culture, the happier they are as a whole. That concludes our train ride going through what is best for an empire. As a final reminder, empires are always doomed to fail. Empire is a state, an active state of conquering others. The more you conquer, the more you have to control and worry about. If you are always conquering, you will quickly hit your limit. Ironically enough, if you want your empire to last, it is better to not be an empire at all. Thank you.